The Constitutional Convention is one of the biggest events the UAW holds every 4 years. And if you've never been, it's a very exciting thing and it's also very challenging. And so, what we want to do tonight is talk about ways to help you understand what's going to happen if you've never been and give you kind of a layout how things are going to go and give you some advice. Debbie, you.
Hi, I'm Debbie Kirchner. I represent Region 1D. The first convention I ever attended was 91, 92. Owen Bieber was president. And I've been to every one since then, and each one of them have been a little different and a little more exciting. And I'm looking forward to this one to see how it's going to all roll out.
My first one was in 94 in Anaheim, and I've been to every one since then. And they all are special. It's a very interesting time. So let's get started. All right, we want to talk about the convention, which will take place the 15th to the 18th of June. We want to talk about what the Constitutional Convention is, the history of the conventions, and how Luca factors into that. Any democratic organization needs a set of rules, and the UAW is no different. Our Constitution is what we go by. It determines everything we do. And at the Constitutional Convention, the Constitution is amended and changed to fit the changing needs of the UAW. Now, these have been happening for a long time. They used to be every 3 years, and in 98, they switched to every 4 years. If you're not familiar with the structure, essentially what happens is a local union elects delegates to represent them at the Constitutional Convention, and your number of delegates is based on the size of your membership. And these delegates debate and vote on proposed resolutions. Typically in the spring prior to a Constitutional Convention, resolutions to the Constitution are submitted. And when these are brought together to the Resolutions Committee, the Resolutions Committee is made up of representatives from each region, and they go through all of these resolutions and assemble them together in an organized manner and put together a book. Debbie? Yeah.
Yeah, and it's important if you're going to go to represent your local union that you know what are the resolutions your membership put in, because that way you can keep track of them and know what information that your membership might want you to bring back. So all that information will be in the book, and sometimes they list the locals, that a sampling of the locals who put in the resolutions that's right in the book. So, and that's part of something that we'll all get a copy of as representatives of Luca at the convention.
All right. The AFL-CIO chartered the UAW in August of 1935, and the following spring, in 1836, the first Constitutional Convention was held in South Bend, Indiana. And since that time, like I said, they were held every 3 years up until 1998, and it moved to a 4 year. And you can see from some of these historic photographs, they've been held a lot of places: Atlantic City, Buffalo, Cleveland, Ohio, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. For many years, the Constitutional Convention was moved around to different places throughout the UAW. Around 2006, I think it was, they decided to start having them in Detroit. And they've been in Detroit ever since. But here you can see, here's John Kennedy speaking in 1962, at the Constitutional Convention. Here's John Kennedy in 1959 with Leonard Woodcock, who would become the president after Walter Reuther. So constitutional conventions have a long, distinguished history. Here's 62 in Atlantic City, Walter Reuther, Eleanor Roosevelt is the lady next to him. And then we see, former President Doug Frazier here, California, 1977. Now, the outside press has always been welcome to our constitutional conventions, but in the 1980s, the International Union recognized the importance of local union press having access. So Luca began to be invited starting in the 80s. Debbie?
Okay, it's important that we got a chance to say our point of view, because so often they gave so much of it to the press who didn't represent our point of view. They were there to be not supportive all the time, but local union editors were supportive of the UAW, and they knew the information the members wanted, and that's why it was important that we finally got a voice.
Yeah, so, but since then we've been included. Now, in March of this year, President Fain sent a call letter out to region directors and local union leadership, notifying them that of the availability to issue press credentials to Luca representatives in the locals. Now, each local if you're local, you have to be in Luca to be able to request press credentials, but you submit them in writing. The call letter has all the information. Your president essentially sends a letter into the PR department and requests Luca credentials for it. You can get two people, you can ask for more. We have to wait and see how many. But now the deadline is May 1st. So if your local has not done this, they need to be doing it pretty quickly.
And if your local's not a Luca member, there's still time to join. UAB.org, Luca has the
Yeah,
application right on there.
I signed up a local last week in my region that was not Luca members that wanted to send somebody. So this is also a good way, a good organizing drive for Luca.
And membership is free.
Yes. Now, once we get there, we'll have our own section on the floor. We'll let Debbie talk a little bit about what to expect once you get there because it can really be overwhelming. There's so much things going on,
Okay,
you
when you
know.
first arrive, what you have to do when you first get there, once you get settled in your room, is to go down to the convention center and you have to register that you're there for it. So there'll be like booths or people set up all along the side of the wall. You don't register, we don't register with regular delegates. There should be a sign that says Luca. And so we go there, and it might say Luca and special guests. It varies through the years. But that's where we go. We give them our credentials that we are supposed to be there, that we've been approved, and they give us our credentials that we'll wear around our neck for the whole week. You do not get in the door and on the floor unless you have those credentials on and they can see your name. They're very strict about it, and they got really strict last time, and I suspect the security will be just as tight this time. So, in addition to that, you're going to get a kit, and in that kit's going to have all sorts of information about what's going to happen during the week, resolutions, reports that'll be read. There's a lot of report reading going on for the thing. Every department reports out, and that way you've got it all written down, and you don't have to worry so much about taking specific notes for all that stuff. So after we check in and then we get our credentials. Now, you also want to check with your region because your region will have activities too. And depending on your region, there may be a place for you to check in with your region. It might be your hotel or it might be there at the convention center, depending on the rooming situation that you're in. So you check in with your region as well. They'll give you an agenda, what's going to happen. There's usually some special activities or things going on. And that way you'll know when they are. Sometimes they forget, the local leadership sometimes will forget to tell the editors or the communicators about all that stuff. Also, make sure to ask your local leadership if there's anything going on that would require, they don't have them so much anymore because of the financial rules now, but there used to be, the region would have an event where sometimes you would dress up a little bit and or the international would, but I don't know what they're going to do this year. But your region should know, your president or your delegates, whatever your officers are that are going, they should be getting some correspondence from the region that'll let them know so you're prepared.
Yeah. At 6 o'clock on Sunday night, we'll
Yep.
have a meeting at the Huntington Place. When we get the room and all, we'll have that, try to have that in your kit, but we'll all meet as a group there. We'll have like a little reception and talk about things for the week.
Okay, that's just for Luca representatives that are credentialed. So when you go into the convention hall, a couple things to keep in mind. We have specified seating. So Luca has some seats like this layout shows. We're usually on the right-hand side of the room. Towards the front, they have international guests that for a couple days will sit in front of us. But that's where we sit. You don't sit with your local. First off, there's not usually enough chairs, and second, it confuses the voting process. So that's where we meet every day. The advisory council members that are there will be there. We'll be at the ends of the tables so that if you have questions, you'll know to get a hold of one of us and we can help you find an answer for it. Now, all this could change because they haven't actually shown us the layout or shown Roy the layout so that he can communicate that to us. But this is the way it's been for many conventions, and I assume it'll be very similar to this now. When you walk in the door, there's security measures. They're going to check your camera bag. They're going to check your phone. They're going to check all of that. The convention hall is typically very cold. If you're cold all the time anyhow, bring a sweater or a jacket. They keep it really cold because there's so many people in there. And so it's good to have something extra to put on because sometimes you don't get a chance to go back to your room to take care of that. So you can take pictures while you're in there. You can take pictures of the stage, of the speakers on the stage, because it's more than just resolutions. You're gonna get an opportunity to hear speakers and see speakers that you'll never have had a chance to hear in person before. And that's one of the big things about the convention. What we want to make sure of is that during voting that you stay in your seat and the delegate because they vote in a couple different ways. One time, sometimes they have hand votes where they ask everyone to raise their hand and then they count them. And if we're wandering around, the count could be messed up. Sometimes they do a voice vote. We're quiet during that. We don't respond to that. We don't get a vote or a voice in any of the debates. And then sometimes they do a roll call vote where they will go and they start with the lowest local union number and go right up to local 6,000, or if there's a bigger number than that. And they do them one at a time, and the delegates get up and cast their votes. So that's kind of a long process, but you at least can have some idea of when your local is going to be up there voting because there's the big monitors, the big screens all around so you can see what's going on if you're not close enough. There's a media room upstairs on the convention floor, and it'll have TV monitors with live feed from the stage. That is the only room that we're going to have podcasting in. No podcasting on the floor. So if you want to do some podcasting up to the Luca Media Room, it's important that we conduct ourselves in a professional manner. People are looking at us. They're trying to see what value we have as communicators. And, there are always people looking to demean what we do. So we have to remember that being able to cover the proceedings is a privilege. It's not a right, and we need to act accordingly. If there is someone who does not act accordingly, that will be dealt with, and you could lose your opportunity to be there at all. Your press credentials can be taken away from you, and your regional director will be notified. So let's go and do a good professional job the best we can. The other thing that you want to remember is that there's bus transportation from your hotel to the convention center. There should be signs up in your hotel, and there'll be signs up in the convention center by the doors, the schedule of the buses run and what bus you need to run. They'll have the hotel names on them. So it's important that you keep track of those times if you're not close enough to walk. The convention doesn't stop. It doesn't stop for lunch. It goes on. There are some days, first day's not bad. You get in the middle of the week and they're trying to get all the business taken care of so they can adjourn on time on Thursday. And sometimes it goes to 6 or 7 o'clock at night. There's only 2 places to eat in the convention center. Keep in mind, they're both expensive. So it's a good idea if you're a snacker to keep some stuff in your bag. And we arrange with each other all the time for someone to cover while we go get something to eat, or if you're there with more than one person from your local. And there's some places within walking distance you can also get something to eat, but that takes more time. So you want to make sure you keep an eye on the agenda. Bob, you got a question? Bob?
Sorry, it was already answered in the
Oh, okay.
chats.
Okay.
So John, I'm going to kick it to John for covering the convention.
Yeah, well, it's a really grand event, but it's also a busy event, and it's easy to find yourself overwhelmed. There's a few things I've learned to help stay caught up with things. There's certain times of day there's kind of lull, when they're debating resolutions early in the morning. Like Debbie said, you get the resolution book, and oftentimes, and I don't know if it will this time, but you'll get the tables will have handouts for the day, naming speakers who are going to speak and talking about the resolutions. One thing I do to get ahead during that period, I take and write up synopsis of those resolutions they're going to talk about. So I've already got some of the stuff written and, ready to go, because sometimes the debating can take a long time. And so you can spend your time doing that. Keep a check on uaw.org through the day, and you can get updates and things there. Like me, I typically am doing my region website, and I'm doing updates all day long. So it can be a big task to be writing, taking photographs, doing HTML, so you have to pace yourself, particularly when somebody's speaking. I try to get some notes, and most people in their remarks have 2 or 3 hard-hitting statements they want to make. And I normally try to get those word for word if I can. So, I watch for those. Taking photographs is a huge job, but there's typically about 60 Luca people there. Plus, delegates like to take photographs. So get your photograph and move back so everybody gets a chance, But it can be kind of like, a sporting event or something where everybody's in the way. But get your shots and then be mindful of the people around you.
And keep in mind, excuse me, Smith, but keep in mind, they're going to be speaking for a long time, several minutes in picture taking time. So you don't have to rush up there at the beginning. You can step back and wait a few minutes if it's really crowded and you can't get where you need to be, and that'll open up for you.
One thing I've discovered, shooting 45-degree angles off the podium is better than shooting right ahead. A lot of times people want to crowd right in front of the podium. If you shoot from the side, you typically can frame the background because usually the stage setup will have left and right stage graphics up. And like here in this photograph from, I think, 2010, the UAW logo made a good background to stuff. And remember to fill your frame, but the 45-degree angle to me works a lot better than head on. If you try to shoot head on, if the speaker's not very tall, they're stuck behind the podium and it's hard to really see them. And typically the speakers will sweep the audience, so you can wait till they look in the direction you're standing from. But, looking at shooting from the left or the right rather than head on. Another thing is trying to keep up with who speaks. Always, when a person speaks, they're going to put a title slide up. I always make a photograph of the title slide before the person starts speaking. Then that helps me get the spelling of their name correct, when I go back and post and write about it. But I always shoot that title slide, so you'll have the correct spelling and title for whoever's speaking. Now, not everything that's newsworthy happens on the stage. The convention is really about the membership. So during debates, a lot of times, it's good to get photographs of people standing at the mic talking about, the different resolutions. And not always the person you'll get a photograph of might be from your local. What I typically try to do is once I do that, you see here, I'll take a photograph of their badge to help me identify them later. Debbie, you.
No, that and you have to kind of be aware of what's going on because sometimes your local is all the way on the other side of the convention hall, and that's pretty big to get to in a hurry. So you have to kind of keep an eye on when going to when things are happening. Talk to your local. If they're debating a resolution, if there's people in your local who plan on speaking on it, try to find that out, in advance so you can be over there and get the picture and not have to run all the way across the convention hall because you're probably going to miss it if that's what you do.
And they typically do it by region, you know.
Yep, they do by
So,
region. Yep.
so you can be watching for when your region's time to speak comes up. They typically give a lot of awards. That's another thing, keeping up with the awards they give. That's another time where I always shoot the title so I can get the name of the award and to go with the person. So be conscious of that. And if you're using a traditional camera, you're going to want to use a long lens and a wide lens. Oftentimes, when they give an award, there'll be like a large group of people. And for those situations, you need a wide lens. Then when a person's speaking, you can go to the long lens and, get that tight shot, like the one here at the bottom, So make certain you have the equipment you need to do what you want to do.
John, what about would you suggest they use flash
I
if
use
they know how?
flash. Stage lighting can be tricky. It's often kind of harsh, because they're lighting it for the live feed cameras that they're using in the back. That's another thing you have to be, careful of because the International will hire a company to videotape it. And you've got a stand in the back where you'll have stationary cameras, but you'll also have mobile cameras who are working around the front. Always be very cautious and work around and don't get in the way of their shots. But like I said, I use a flash because that allows me to control what the light's doing instead of what's happening on the stage. Because sometimes the lighting on the stage can change depending on the mood of what the event that's happening. So if you have a flash, I would highly recommend using it. And like I said, remember, there's lots of stuff that happens on the floor that makes good shots. It's not all about, the leadership or the guest speakers. It's about the membership. And I think photographs of people on the floor are just as effective as the ones from the stage.
And try to get some variety because you will see you have 5 delegates. They stand up for every resolution and they sit down for every resolution. They're usually sitting in the same spot all day long and try to find some action shots where they're talking to each other or create some action shots with them it looks like they're doing something besides the same shot over and over again.
Oftentimes there's a lot of receptions and things at night. I would not recommend carrying a camera to reception. You've got your cell phone. if a need comes up to take a photograph, you'll have the cell phone to do that with. But I don't think it's a good idea to carry cameras to receptions because it makes people nervous.
Well,
You
it
know,
also is heavy.
yeah, it's
You can't
and
have a good time. You can't you do anything because you've got this heavy camera around your neck, and it doesn't
and
make you want to get places that you might go if you just were using something lighter like your phone.
that's right. And these are very long days. I mean, you're going to be wore out by the end of it,
Hmm.
because it's one of those things. Think about when you're conducting an interview, how stressful that is. All right, so then think about an interview that's lasting 10 or 11 hours. So it can be stressful.